All right, greetings and welcome back once again, YouTube. This is Mona. I said, let me get this in. It's been a long day, y'all. Oh man, it's been a long day. I pray everybody is doing well. I said, let me get this in. I've been coming across some things uh, in studying that I kind of want to share as we usually do, and so that we could just take note as we go along. This episode is looking at the 1950s and the culture in the 1950s, and how we're able to see some of that is by looking at the entertainment in the 1950s. So, um, this one is from Amos and Andy, right? If you're not familiar with Amos and Andy, I'll read a little bit about it while I give people some time to come in, and then, hey, greetings, what's going on? Where's Mando? What's going on? We're gonna take a little. I'm a little tired today, but we're gonna do what we do. It's been a long day, y'all. Let me share my screen a little bit and give a little walk up to the conversation of high value. This whole conversation. Does the man care if the woman has money? All this type of stuff like this. So, divorce, I found one, but I'm not going to go over that one today because it's a little bit longer. But this Amos and Andy, if you're familiar or if you're not, we're going to share quickly. Let me share my screen. This is the Amuna I'm tired voice. So, if it's a little bit deeper than usual. Amos and Andy was a long-lived American radio sitcom about quote-unquote black characters, initially set in Chicago and later in Harlem. While the show had a brief life in 1950s with black actors, the 1928 to 1960 radio show was created, written, and voiced by two white actors. That's very important. Freeman Golden and Charles Correll, who played Amos Jones and Andrew Hogg Brown Correll, as well as incidental characters on television. 1951 to 1953, black actors took over the majority of the roles, while white characters were infrequent. So this Amos and Andy show was big in its day, right? And to understand that culture is also affected by media. And for such a long running from 1928 to 1960, you have what is that, 32 years, you have a very influential, very famous sitcom that is written, produced, and voiced by European actors. And it's not only to the 1950s that we see melanated actors. So basically, they were playing ventriloquists. You understand? What they thought about melanated people, how they saw melanated people, that is what was projected on the screen. So I think that's important to to note. So let me stop this here. Hey, Sandy Moon. Hello, how you doing? Today we're going over some important, interesting things from our past. So I know people are going to come on late, but they're probably going to have to catch a little bit on the replay. So we're going to take a look now at.
Well, what's the trouble with going to an early movie?
Well, this particular one is Sapphire, sister, is coming to visit. Now, if you understand a lot of the tropes, Sapphire is one of the tropes. The mammy is one of the tropes. The angry black woman, which would be the Sapphire character, is one of the tropes. And Sapphire happens to be the wife of one of the main characters.
You got to come back and face the supper dishes. But it was such a wonderful picture, though, Mama. Mm-hmm. Oh, that scene where he finally took his sweetheart in his arms and he was singing their song. I was just humming it.
Wait, also it's important to note that we're looking at culture. We're looking at culture. We're looking at thought processes. We're looking at the willingness of black characters, quote unquote, to play these roles. So her mother also lives in the house with them. So keep that in mind.
Feel my arms, the way you feel my dreams, the dreams that you inspire with love's own sweet desire. My love,
singing. You're cracking the plaster.
George, don't be silly. We were only singing a song from the picture.
Singing? Well, I ain't heard a noise like that since I stripped the gears on my 1928 Essex.
Don't pay no attention to him, Sapphire.
I'll tell you,
Isn't he
living in
kind
this
of
house with...
isn't he kind of reminiscent of George Jefferson, this same angry, middle-aged, balding in the middle, little poochy man? To me, he's reminiscent of or Judge Jefferson is reminiscent of him, but that's interesting.
Two women can drive a man crazy. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stand it.
Well, don't stand there, Baldy. Go on and open the door.
Telegram for Miss Ramona Smith.
Thank you. That's my mother-in-law. There's a nickel for you, boy.
I have to stop every now and again, but yeah, I don't know what part of that was funny, but yeah, okay.
It's a telegram for you, Mama.
Yeah?
And incidentally, I tipped the boy. He owes me a quarter.
Why, it's from your sister Hortense in Chicago. Oh, how wonderful. Sapphire, it says here that Hortense is quitting her job teaching in Chicago and is coming here to live in New York.
Isn't that wonderful? She can stay with us.
What? Stay with us. She can't do it.
And why not?
'Cause two women in this house is bad enough. And I'm sick and tired of sharing my bathroom with wet camisoles.
Now, look, George, Hortense is my sister, and she's staying here. Now, Mama, you can move in the room with me. Hortense can have your room, and George can sleep on the couch out in the living room. Oh, honey.
So the thought of the black woman, quote unquote, not respecting her husband is woven into this narrative. Her mother is there, and the thought is that the mother kind of takes the place of the husband, and she is confirming with the mother as opposed to the husband who is objecting. And as before they can even have a conversation or discussion about what they should do going forward, she's already decided how everything is going to go. Right, in this marriage. So some people may have you to think that whether this is culture or whether this was reality, some people will have you to think that it was the picture that they're painting. You know what I mean? Today, but we're seeing this in the 50s now. How many people's minds and how's it this type of way in which you did things? Where was the humility?
That's just perfect. At last, I can have my baby living here with me.
Now, wait a minute. I won't have it. I'm standing up for my rights. And I tell you that this worm is not only turning, but it's sitting up and snapping.
And I tell you, Hortense is staying here.
And I tell you that Hortense is not staying here. And I ain't sleeping on no couch. And that's final.
Huh.
Clearly, someone wanted to illustrate that the melanated man did not have a right within the home to say what it is he wanted and what he didn't want. I'm still on the fence about it, but I'm just observing what we're seeing here.
Good morning, George. What kind of a night did you have?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Good.
I hope I didn't disturb you women when I fell off with the couch 4 times.
Oh, well, now, George, you don't have to get up yet. Hortense is going to fix breakfast, and Mom and I have a little housework to do. But you go right on sleeping and don't have a care in the world.
Also, if you're not familiar with this show, the wife is always contending with the husband because he's lazy, he's always scheming, he doesn't have enough money to maintain the household. I think that's important to note, given that this show ran for so long, right?
is it necessary for you to dust my head at this hour of the day?
Oh, I'm sorry, George. I didn't realize it. Now go on back to sleep. That's right.
Awake, for morning in the bowl of night has flung the stone that puts the stars to flight.
You say there's some kid throwing stones out there?
Oh, good morning, George. That was Omar Khayyam.
Must be a new kid in the block. I never heard of him.
Oh, George, Omar Khayyam is one of the great poets of literature.
Literature. Look, Hortense, all I try to do is get a little sleep around here.
But the sun has arisen.
Okay, greetings and welcome to those who just joined us. We are going over just looking at some of these concepts, these modern concepts that people are using, high value, educated, the relationship, and looking through culture. And this is 1950s. This is Amos and Andy show. And if you just joined us, and greetings and Zinga, welcome to the discussion. If you just joined us, what's happened is that we're seeing the dynamic that was displayed on the television, the male-female dynamic. The husband doesn't have any necessarily right in his home. The mother has come in, and now the sister, but the sister is Hortense, who we're seeing here, and she's educated. She's educated. She used to be a teacher, and now she's moving to where they are and living with them. So we're looking and watching how, yeah, they were a mess, and they were on TV for a while and radio for a while and programmed the whole generation of people. So it's interesting to see what our foreparents would have been watching and what they would have been exposed to.
Awake, for morning in the bowl of night has flung the stone that puts the stars to flight. And lo, the hunter of the east has caught the sultan's turret in a noose of light.
Look, Hortense, them poet fellas might like to get up early, but I, as a late sleeper, and if you don't mind, I'd like to get a little sleep around here.
Oh, why, certainly, George, certainly. I'm so sorry. Mama, I just happened to think, have you seen my shoulder bag anywhere around here?
Yes, I believe I did see it. It is, honey.
Oh, thank you, Mama, thank you.
You're welcome, honey.
Okay, you win. I don't mind being dusted and vacuumed, but when you come and start bowling with me, I surrender.
When you portray the man as shiftless, as we're seeing here, as lazy, as not having ambition, it creates this imbalance, right? This is something that is left over from even slavery. This thought that if you're not working for me, then you're lazy. If you're not making me to profit off of you. So the question is, how did we get in the position that we are, right? There's a lot of engineering that happened, but let's continue. And willingness. And in this part, when they're in television, there's a willingness for these melanated people to play these type of characters.
Sapphire, ain't you through showering yet?
I'll be out in a minute, George. I have to wash out a few things. How yours, Georgie?
It's about time.
I know I keep stopping it, but I can't just play straight through. The next thing to note is that the mother doesn't have a husband. So the mother doesn't have a husband, and she's not that much older, but she's living with and compromising her daughter's relationship.
Sneaky things to do. Women's. 35 minutes.
Oh, George!
What do you want?
Oh, never mind. I found it.
I clean foul. Now, wait a minute here. It's my turn.
It's all yours, George.
William, boys, 3 women around the house is just too many. They drive a man crazy.
Sound like they got you outnumbered, Kingfish. Well, it happened that way sometime, Kingfish, when you got a big family.
Sorry, I couldn't resist to all them people who were saying they want to have multiple wives. Kingfish is over here hollering for 3 women in the house, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't, just a second now. You got a string or something on your sleeve there.
Another one of them things. I can't understand it, Calhoun. There ain't but 3 women in the house, and there was at least 30 pair of stockings hanging in the bathroom. They must have legs I don't even know about.
You know, Kingfish, Ruby met Hortense, and from what she says, she's a nice, cultured, refined gal.
Yeah, but 3 women around the house is just too many. And then on top of that, Hortense ain't contributing 1 nickel to her board.
Yeah, that sounds like dead weight to me. Well, I gotta be getting along, Kingfish. Just be patient. Maybe she'll meet a nice guy, marry him, and move out. See you later.
So it's interesting to look at the dynamics. She just got there, but the concern is economics, right? That I can't afford to have you here because honestly, he can't even afford to maintain his household. This is one of the contentions if you watch the show. So the moment somebody who looks like you shows up and they cannot immediately contribute, they are causing a deficit in your household. It's a liability. So we look at each other oftentimes in this ways. This is how he's looking at his sister-in-law. And Zinga says, but if you ask the actors if they're uplifting the community, they would say yes. Why? Because there was little to no representation in Hollywood, even though it was clearly a travesty. Yeah, this when we look back, this is what we're doing right now. Yeah, financial liability. This is what we're doing. Looking back at a certain time, we do things and say it was what I thought was best at the time. And then when we look back, we can, re-examine whether or not it was the best thing to do.
You know, Kingfish, I think Amos got something there. Maybe you could introduce her to some fella and get her married. What does she look like?
That's her.
Well, let's try to think up another angle.
No, Calhoun.
Yo, that talk about shade. And what is he doing walking around with a picture of Hortense in his pocket, right? But the thought is get her married. This is not because this is how you're going to get rid of her. This is how you're going to pass her on to somebody else. I think that was interesting.
I think you boys got something there. Marrying her off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you never can tell about people. If you introduce her to some fella, she might grow on him like a fungus.
And I think I know the big fat stump to start the growth on.
Andy Brown, huh?
Yeah, but there's only one trouble. If Sapphire and her mama find out about this, they'll kill the deal. Cause Sapphire wouldn't want Hortense and cucumbered with Andy.
Well, knowing you, Kingfish, I don't figure you're gonna have no trouble with that angle.
But Andy, like I told you, that Hortense is a school teacher, and she's been teaching the kids in the 4th grade. Now, in order to make an imprint on Hortense, I got to bring you up to the intelligence level that she's been accustomed to.
Yeah.
And you hear that? So she's a school teacher. She's educated. Nobody cares about your degree. And he, at this time, is saying, in order for this to work, I have to elevate you. Not necessarily that he had to diminish Hortense, right? He had to elevate his friend to Hortense's level so that the friend would be attractive. I thought that was fascinating.
That's the thing to do, all right. But how are we going to do it?
Well, Hortense is always spouting poetry, and so I done bought a poetry book here. Now, Andy, I want you to mesmerize some of it. And when you talk to her, I want you to throw in some of them little bits of wisdom, you know, like bon matzah and all that stuff.
Right.
Well, Andy, you better start off on this in here. Read that.
The Legend of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Took 3 fellows to write this, huh?
Well, Andy, that's a long poem. Read that first cadenza right there.
Oh, yeah. On the shores of Itchigumi.
Wait a minute, Andy. That's Gitchigumi.
Oh, yeah. By the shores of Gitchigumi, by the shining, still deep waters, stood the wigwam of Nokomis, daughter of the moon, Nokomis.
That's a beautiful hunk of stuff there, ain't it, Andy?
So the display of the melanated man as not bright, not intelligent, shiftless, this not having authority in his own household. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to watch. Look, I'm over here watching this stuff because I want to be accurate about where this thought is coming from, where the grandchildren or the children are having arguments and contention and gender wars and calling people dusties, and right. This is what this behavior would have been considered, what to a certain degree what we're seeing today. Somebody who's pretending to be something that they're not, right? Not that bright. But whose mind is this coming from? Was this reality, or was this from the mind of the oppressor, who eventually it became reality? Like, what are we looking at here? The chicken or the egg? No, it's not really much different today. This is why I said this stuff is fascinating.
Okay, Kingfish, when did I do up there?
Well, Andy, it just so happened that Sapphire and her mama are going to a movie tonight, and that'll clear the deck for you and Hortense. Well, son, look for you about 8 o'clock.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to meet up with an intelligent gal like Hortense. For one thing, it'll stop a lot of the talk that's been going on around here.
What do you mean, Andy?
Well, there's been a lot of talk going on around town that I ain't very smart, that my head is empty. And this will prove to everybody that there's nothing in it. Hold on, Kingfish.
You see the laugh tracks? That's not even funny. That people are saying that he's not smart and he's not intelligent, right? And if someone is not smart and not intelligent, how does one feel comfortable submitting to someone who you feel is you're smarter than? That becomes difficult, doesn't it?
Now, she'll be right out, Andy.
Yeah, do I look all right?
Oh, you look wonderful. But remember, Andy, I told you she was intelligent, but she's a little on the plain side.
Yeah, well, I ain't expecting no Venus de mildew, you know.
Well, Hortense, here he is. I'd like for you to meet Mr. Brown.
Oh, I'm very happy to know you, Mr. Brown.
Likewise. I'll bring you a box of candy.
Yeah, and Hortense, that's the real mark of a gentleman. Unless I misses my guess.
Well, today that brother would be a simp. He over here bringing candy and stuff. That's some simp type behavior. That's the conversation that would be happening today. But back then, they think that was the mark of a gentleman. Oopsie.
That's the 60 cent a pound quality. Well, here's one with a nut on it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Wait a minute. Did he just flick the candy? did he just take Hortense's candy and flick it in his mouth? George is doing everything. Miss Mandy said, Deep Mind says, I feel like this was their interpersonal or interpretation. It happens today. Men portray themselves as one thing to get you and then switch up later. And people could say, yep, I would agree. And women do the same thing, portray themselves as one thing, and then later down the line, they switch up. Because you feel as though the person is, whatever it is, whatever the person may be inclined to. And then once you get into the space, you realize that you don't want to pretend anymore. And then it all falls apart.
Much, Mr. Brown. Would you care to sit down?
Oh, yeah, Andy, I'll sit right down here. Yeah, sit right down there, Andy. And I'll sit here. And Hortense, you can sit. Uh-oh. No, Hortense, you sit right here. and I'll sit here. Now, Mr. Brown here is interested in the finer things of life, and I thought you two had a lot in common.
How nice.
Oh, suppose we just sit around here and discuss the culture aspects of life.
Well, that's all right with me.
It sounds interesting.
Yes, there's nothing like a nice culture discussion.
By the shores of Gitchigumi, by the shining deep sea waters, stood the wigwam of Columbus.
Did you hear that, Hortense? Oh, culture just popped out the boy. He couldn't hold it back. He's just full of it.
Oh, how exciting. Hiawatha. That's my favorite poem.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, like I see, there's nothing like a good culture discussion.
Do you know anything else, Mr. Brown?
Well,
Oh, sure. The boy just full of the stuff. See something else, Mr. Brown.
This little piggy went to market.
I'm
This
done.
little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef, but this little piggy had none.
You see how this is even in this YouTube sphere, social media, where somebody's just repeating, what they heard, what somebody else said. But when you press them for more, when you press them to expound, you get this little piggy went to market, this little piggy went home, right? Because there's nothing else behind that. And instead of spending the time that needs to actually get a hold or a grasp of the subject matter, we would rather repeat. The second thing that I noticed is that Hortense doesn't have any weave. She doesn't have any fake eyelashes. She doesn't have fake booty. She didn't have push up, but yet still she's a bit on the plain side. So we also have to consider that it don't matter what time you're in, whatever the standard, whatever the ideal the man may have in his head, he told her that basically she's average at best. Yo, they just said Hortense was plain. Hortense is she's dressed, she's not looking skanky, she has on her clothes are ironed, and yet still they still got jokes for Hortense. The question is what's going on here? These days, a male home visit, they usually come empty-handed, expecting you to be the perfect hostess while they bring nothing other than themselves and their appetite, many appetites. Yeah, and then that's crazy. When we say that traditional, the way in which people have even stepped away from hospitality, like you're visiting somebody's home and you come with like, where I come from, they say you're too langan. You come with your too langan, like you come empty-handed, right? How do you just come to somebody's home, even for the first time, and bring nothing? Right? Looking around, talking about you want to Netflix and chill. We have stepped away from even the base things of how to interface with people. But let's continue. Yeah, they told Hortense she was average at best, y'all. This is something else.
Hear that, Hortense?
Oh, how delightful. I just love a man with a sense of humor, Mr. Brown.
Well, like I see, I got a little business to tend to, so I'll leave you two here alone to spout culture at each other.
Well, it certainly was nice of you to bring Mr. Brown over, Brother George.
Yeah, and incidentally, Andy, you can spout until 11:15, because Sapphire and her mama is going to a double feature.
Okay, Kingsley.
Dude, it's so
George, have you seen Hortense this afternoon?
No, I ain't. I ain't got the least idea where she is.
Funny. You know, Mama, it's strange. She's been going out a lot this past week with never a word of explanation.
Well, she's over 21, and I guess where she goes is her own business.
Well, I guess you're right, Mama. Besides, Hortense is such a cultured girl. She's probably at the library or the museum or doing something intellectual.
Oh, yes.
Coochie coochie.
do you see how he's so well, again, it's a show, but the willing to scheme, the willing to not be transparent and upfront with his wife about what he's trying to do. And the fact that they kept highlighting the women, like, Hortense, she has options. She's smart. She should know what she's doing. She's educated. That's interesting, given that people would like to have us to believe like this is a modern thing.
She cool.
Yeah, the
Coochie, coochie, coo to you, too.
You know, Andy, in all my born days, I never thought I'd fall in love with anybody like you.
Yeah, well, that goes for me, too, honey.
So the high value woman fell in love with average man, right? This whole thought that the woman's weakness, even no matter how much education she has, is somebody who's able to get through that barrier and appeal to her. So that's interesting because this happens even in today's space and time. You may have a PhD, you may have a master's, you have all these things, and you may go for the carpenter or the construction man. And people are pretending in this new universe that that doesn't still happen, and it really does.
Yeah. But getting back to the elopement, you think about 12 o'clock tonight will be all right?
Yes, Andy. But I really hate to elope this way without telling Mama and Sapphire. But George thinks it's best.
Yeah, well, it is more romantic that way. But one thing, Hortense,
Wait, planning to elope. George, as a male who's supposed to be looking out for her, her brother-in-law, is misguiding her, misinforming her. This is something that still happens. And they're running game on her essentially, right? And so she's the prey and they're the predators in this setup, in this narrative. Let me know what you think about that. Is that what you're saying, or am I tripping?
not that it makes any difference, but that $10,000 you say you done accumulated while she was working, you planning on throwing that in the matrimonial pot, ain't you?
Would it make any difference whether I throw it in or not?
Oh, no, no. I love you just the same, but it would be good to know that we has that to carry us over the rough spots.
Oh, Andy, we're going to be so happy.
So Andy is like, yo, we about to be in for it. You got $10,000. Put some of that high value money into the pot. Oh, Father, help me. This happens often. They got those memes on social media when the tax credit comes or when your tax return comes, that some homosexual, as they call them, men begin to be as women would be in buttering you up to make sure they have access to your monies, right?
Well, Kingfish, everything is all set. We's eloping at 12 o'clock tonight.
Well, congratulations, old boy. I hate to see my dear darling sister-in-law leave our happy household, but what's to be must be.
Yeah, well, these things will happen, but I'm getting everything ready for the elopement. Lightning is getting the ladder.
Now, look, Andy, when you put the ladder up there, don't make too much noise, because Sapphire and our mama will be sleeping in the next room, and we don't want them to know nothing about it yet.
Yeah, well, I'll keep quiet, all right.
Well, Andy, I'll see that Hortense is all ready, and I'll see that she gets out the window.
Well, thanks, Kingfish.
But, Andy, I don't guess you'll be going too far on your honeymoon with the limited capital that you got.
Well, we won't have to worry about that. You see, Hortense done saved up $10,000 from working, and we'll have that to fall back on.
You say she got $10,000?
Yeah, she ain't told nobody about it except me.
Holy mackerel.
Well, I gotta get on back, Kingfish, and take care of the elopement and get everything ready. And if I don't see you before, I'll see you after the honeymoon. So long. Oh, hi, Calvin.
Hi.
So he knows that Andy has no money. He knows that he's not a good match for his sister-in-law, but he doesn't care because to him, I'm getting rid of you. And now when he thinks that she has benefit monetarily, he is all in his feelings because he feels as though he could have had access to that if he didn't try to bargain her off to his homeboy. This is this is a crazy storyline, y'all.
Andy? I'm in a hurry. Yeah. Hi, Kingfish. I said, hi, Kingfish. Look, Kingfish. Every time I come in here, something's troubling you. Now, what's wrong?
Calhoun, at last I got my sister-in-law and Andy ready to elope tonight, and I find out she come into some money.
Well, what's wrong with that?
After all these years, somebody in the family come into some money that would practically pay all my household expenses, and here I is getting rid of them.
Well, of all the selfish attitudes I done ever heard of, Kingfish, you ought to be ashamed to yourself trying to break up a beautiful romance. A man who wants a woman for his very own to hold and to cling to. Two people willing to face the world unafraid. The overpowering love of a man who is willing to worship at the feet of the woman he loves. Worship her as he would a shrine. And you would break up this beautiful relationship. A relationship where the two hearts should be as one, united, inseparable.
But Calhoun, there are $10,000 involved here.
Is? Well, how do we get these two crazy people apart?
That's what I asked you, Calhoun.
Let me read some of these comments. Nzinga says, but this is all they're coming up with because of lack of ambition and angry that the women are moving forward, which essentially benefits them. Well, it's man code. Yeah, when we're looking at what is being said today, there is some indifference or anger to the progression, let's say. And we have to see why. Is she stopping you from going forward? Who is stopping you, if anyone? And why do you need to be angry at the other party? Why can't you work together? Or all of these things. In the situation of what we're watching, he saw her as an economic liability, and now that he thinks that she has money, it's like, how do I get her back? Because like you said, she could have paid off all my bills in my household, right? So the question is, well, what were you doing this whole time? Like, what are you up to this whole time? I think there may be a reason why we're hearing a lot of the conversation. Like, I don't care what you do because I'm not going to be living off of your money. I don't care what you do. With the whole I don't care what you do, how do you educate children if you're not educated, right? So that part right there is, I don't know what that is. Maybe somebody can explain. And Zinga says, when you're arrested, you'll be happy to be in front of me. Click some of these on the screen so everybody can see. Well, I don't know if you could see because the thing is over. You'll be happy to be in front of a black female judge, hoping you'll get a lighter sentence. Glad she got an education. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Um, this is deep when you look at it because women have always been chattel to be sold off by any way necessary. Yeah, pretty much, pretty much, pretty much, pretty much. Let's continue.
Now, wait a minute. Now, let me think here. I know what to do. Tell Hortense that the elopement plan has been changed.
Oh, what do you mean?
Tonight, when Andy's climbing up that ladder to Hortense's room, you be waiting on the inside of the room.
Yes, yes.
And when Andy climbs up that ladder, the thing for you to do is this. Now, you get this straight, Kingfish.
Now, you're sure Andy wants me to meet him at the station instead?
Look at the manipulation of the mind on both sides. And I'm going to look at uh, the popular culture media as well as those that they write, the manipulation of the woman for one's, like you said, for one's own benefit. So he didn't have any problem setting her up and not letting her know she was setting up. And now he doesn't have any problem manipulating the situation on the other hand for his own benefit.
That's right, Hortense. You see, Andy got a little nervous about carrying you down that ladder. He afraid he might slip, and he don't want to start off on his honeymoon with a fractured skull.
Well, I'd better hurry because I don't want to keep him waiting.
Look, Lightning, she's got the light on. Lightning, you stay here at the bottom of the ladder for protection.
Yeah, sir. I'll hold the ladder, Mr. Andy.
Yeah, not only that, in case I drops my bride, why, maybe you can break her fall.
Yeah, sir. Careful now, Mr. Andy.
Another thing is, does Andy really want Hortense? And I know I said it before, or does he want what she can offer him, which in this case is the money? In many of these relationships, even modern day, people are uncertain that they are the ones, like you, the soul is who the person really wants, or is what you represent to them, what they feel they can get from you, both on the male side and on the female side, which makes somebody feel maybe tricked, maybe unloved. When you go down the line and you see that the person really didn't love you for you or want you for you, this leads into divorce. This leads into broken homes because the very beginning was off, right?
Oh, Hortense.
What happened, Mr. Andy?
I don't know, Lightning. When I called her name, Hortense give me a little love tap. I think my nose is bleeding.
Ooh-wee. She really tapped you, all right.
Yeah, she was a little over affectionate with that tap. Hold it out again, Lightning. Oh, Hortense, my love. Your lover is here. Is this eye closing up on me?
This sure is a rough elopement.
Look like it. I think we got the wrong partner. You go up there and check while I get myself together.
Yes. I beg your pardon, but is this the residence of Miss Hortense Smith? Will you please accept these flowers? She took the flowers, Mr. Andy. Miss Smith, Mr. Andy said for... Oh!
You know, Lightning, I think I know what's wrong with the whole approach.
What you mean, Mr. Andy?
Well, Hortense is the more romantic type. She's probably mad at me because I ain't been romantic enough. Yeah, that's the answer, all right. Hold the ladder, Lightning.
Hold the ladder.
Oh, yo, why is Andy? I got, let me just put what in the world?
By the shores of Gitche. Between the Gitche and the Goomy.
This loping sure is dangerous. You're liable to get hurt.
Yeah, I think you're right. One more trip up that ladder and I'll have to elope on a stretcher.
There's something wrong someplace.
Yeah. You know something, Lightning? I got a sneaking suspicion that her love done cooled. I was through with her. Come on, let's get out of here.
Hey, that man said, man, go that own way. He went up there 3 times. He was misled. He said he got a sneaking suspicion her love has done cooled. Right? Let's get out of here, man. Go that own way. He was ready to give up because it wasn't really, he didn't hear from her, right? She didn't speak. He assumed that the experience he was having was her, and without further exploring, he was willing to give up. How many times we have to bring it into today's space and time, even though we know, like I said in the beginning, this skit was written by Europeans. The show ran from the 1920s to 1960. It was a radio show, 1928 to 1960, a long-running radio show. And so in a short time, it was the actors were melanated in the 50s, but it still kept going. So Europeans were writing this script, and it's projecting to not only Black people, so-called Black people, but white people, and it's pushing this shiftless, lazy, domineering wife, domineering family of the wife, a passive male. This is not now, right? This is not now. This is something that has been coming down throughout the ages. So let's continue.
Yes.
Yes, George. I waited at the station for Andy for 3 hours last night, and he never showed up.
That's the strangest thing in the world. I can't understand it.
Well, all I know is I never again as long as I live.
Now you're doing the smart thing. A man like that ain't worthy of your love.
This is the third time a man has disappointed me. George, I'm through with Myth. I'm never going to have anything more to do with him as long as I live.
Do you hear this? So we have someone in the middle who is who is sabotaging the conversation, um, pushing it one way when it's beneficial, pushing it the other way when it's not, and he quits. Look at what's going on, and then look at what's happening today. Look at what's going on here, just as an illustration for those who be like, why doesn't want to watch in black and white? Sometimes we got to see it in black and white. Look at the illustration between what's happening today and why men are giving up and why women are giving up, and who's in the middle. Because in this situation, George is in the middle, and she has mixed messages, and the male has mixed messages. And at the end of the day, if you want them to break up and not be together so that they can get forward and build families, that's what the end result is going to be. You hear what she says? Let me read on a little bit. Listen to her declaration is.
Andy for 3 hours last night, and he never showed up.
That's the strangest thing in the world. I can't understand it.
Well, all I know is I never want to see him again as long as I live.
Now you're doing the smart thing. A man like that ain't worthy of your love.
This is the third time a man has disappointed me. George, I'm through with Myth. I'm never going to have anything more to do with him as long as I live. And I'm never going to get married.
Hortense, despite the fact that I's a man, you are doing the smart thing. And after all, why should you get married? You got a nice home up at our place, and you can stay there just as long as you want.
Oh, that's sweet of you, George.
And from now on, I want you to consider it your home.
All right, George. I will. You know...
Her hurt and her disappointment is what led her to say that she's not going to get married, right? It happened to her 3 times. The males disappointed her, and she's concluded that it's not worth it. That's what's happening today. That's what's happening a lot today. But people are not willing to hold both parties or all parties, all people involved, accountable for what's actually happening.
Well, George, I'm really happy that I'm so welcome there, because for a while I thought you wanted me to get married so that I wouldn't be a burden.
Why, what in the world ever give you an idea like that?
Well, that's what I felt. And as a matter of fact, I tried so hard to get Andy to marry me that I even made up a story about having $10,000 in cash.
Made up a story? Jim, come back here. Wait a minute, gal. Hold up there.
Well, that was interesting. So at the end, it took so long to get to the point, but the buildup was appreciated. I appreciated it anyway. Is that she was running game to get Andy to marry her by making up the fact that she had $10,000, and we have people running around making up their value, fudging the numbers, leading people to believe they are who they are not, so that they can get this prize, what a lot of people are saying, which is to be married, not realizing that you're going to have to maintain and deal with all of the lies and all of the deceptions that you laid out in order to get the person, right? So yeah, today's been a long day. I went outside today and doing some vending, so I'm a little tired. I'm not going to stay too long, but I wanted to show that just to illustrate the fact that these conversations were happening then, um, and they're happening now, and it is not new. And the disparity between those who are educated and not, and the discomfort that it creates when people feel that intellectually they're not on the same level. The ability to be humble and have humility in all of these spaces has always been an issue. It's always been a divide. So these are something that we should consider when we have people just, drawing these lines in the sand and giving more reasons as to why people shouldn't come together, people shouldn't discuss. It at the end of the day, somebody else is winning. Even if you're not willing and winning, I mean, someone else is winning. You know what I mean? Someone who stands, like at this point, George has something to gain from it. There's somebody somewhere, an entity, a body of people, somebody somewhere benefits from people not coming together in love and in truth. And we have to, if we step back and realize that the other person is not the enemy, the male is not the enemy necessarily, and the female is not necessarily the enemy, then we can look around and see, okay, what is going on behind the scenes? Who stands to gain from us not working together to make things work, right? So this is why then my message, I'll continue. Don't buy into the gender war thing. Because at the end of the day, people cannot come about unless male and female come together and make child and raise children, right? So this whole gender war thing leads to nowhere. I know it's tempting. If you know, Hortense, you heard what she said. She's like, it happened to me 3 times. I'm never, and that's our emotions, and that's the, that's how we feel when certain things happen. But it's good to kind of step back from it. So I'll come back again and talk about other things when I have a little bit more, you know what I mean, that Muna energy and vibe. But hopefully you enjoyed it. I know it's a little different. Um, but I think that there's value. We're gonna come back and watch one that deals with divorce. Cause I don't know, I was messing around and came across something on YouTube from 1940. And I'm gonna read an article that talks about divorce throughout the ages, not the ages, through the decades in America, because people are trying to push a narrative that this thing is new, when in reality it's not new. It has plagued American society all throughout the 1900s, right? So we can take a look at that so we can get more information on that front and be more informed when we're having these discussions. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with me. And I pray everybody have a blessed night.